Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to take a minute to talk to some of our followers about some early considerations for their season. This is going to be aimed a little bit more towards the high school runner just because of the time of the year, but this definitely applies to my more recreational and elite runners that might just have a little bit different season than my high school runners, and so this video is still going to apply to you then. The biggest thing I want to point out is that we need to look from a season-long perspective. Right now, with this being, track season's kind of starting up, we're looking at about a month until our first meet. It's usually like last week of February, typically. And so it's very common for everyone to feel really rushed to be prepped at this point in time, right? So again, I just want everybody to take a step back and take a look at this bigger picture. We are several months out from your end goal, whether that's like a smaller competitive meet, or maybe this is a bigger goal of states, right? So what I typically see people try to do is we rush to incorporate speed workouts because we feel like we have to be ready that first meet in February. And the world's gonna end if we're not there. That's not quite the case. So if we're looking at February, like the last week of February, and then through March, April, May, so we're looking at about like 3 months of racing, right? It's impossible for you to be in peak performance for 3 months, right? So your competitive season is closer to that like districts, champs kind of race time, right? All these meets in the beginning are practice. This is when we're going to practice race day nutrition and race day routines, such as warming up, and we're going to experiment in different races and try different race strategies. There is no expectation for you in February, March, for you to be at your best. If you're at your best in February and March, you're probably not going to be at your best in May. Unfortunately, it's just not how it works. We can't sustain that level of performance that long. And if you are sustaining that level of performance that long, you're probably not actually at your highest level of performance. If we changed up your training, you probably could actually achieve a little bit more. So when I see people rushing to incorporate speed and incorporating it heavily, we tend to skip some things. So what we're skipping are kind of what's going to give us the longevity for the season, and what's also going to give us longevity for our entire running career. So first, we kind of like to taper out strength really early on, because we feel like, if I lift really heavy this day, I'm not going to be fresh enough for this speed workout that I have planned, right? So absolutely, you're going to have speed workouts planned throughout, and they're going to be in a periodized fashion. They're going to change your season. But again, you do not need to be in peak performance right now in your speed workouts, right? So there's no reason for you to be 100% fresh. Yes, we should be strategic about when we plan our strength workouts to avoid overloading our bodies and to get the max out of what we have. But we shouldn't be cutting them out entirely, because it's just not that important right now for every one of your speed workouts to be fresh, completely fresh, that is, just safely fresh. So now is your time to lift heavy, and wean this out as the season progresses. And when I say wean this out, we're not completely going to wean out strength training, but we're going to change the volume and the intensity as the season goes on, which we can talk a little about more on another day. So something else we tend to skip is our nutrition when we're rushing things early on. Now is the time for you to establish your routine for practices and races. So when the biggest races come, we don't have any question as to what your body is going to react well to and what it's going to react poorly to. So that's kind of what we should be focusing on right now. Try different things, fiddle around with stuff, but ultimately we need to make sure we're getting enough. we need to be making sure we get enough in. Don't sacrifice not getting enough in for an upset stomach. Now is when we can try different ways to do that, right? That's what this time is for. Don't, you'd much rather find out something that got the right calories into your body, didn't sit well at this point in the season, versus the day of states. And if we're not getting enough nutrition in, we might not make it all the way to states. So, other thing I want to mention is not to ditch our long runs. Long runs take a lot longer to build up and to get really efficient at. And I don't just mean long runs, I mean even some just our longer runs that aren't what we'd consider a long run, but let's say most of you guys started conditioning first week of December or so, somewhere around there. So really it's been about a month and a half. If you are safely progressing in a way that we're not going to get increase our risk of injury, you're probably just now reaching where we could be at your peak long run, developing up to like a pretty decent long run. We don't need to cut it now. We just got to that point, and so we shouldn't be feeling that pressure to cut that and replace it 100% with speed, right? It's not going to be there forever, definitely not. But right now, this is going to be the aerobic base that you need, and if we cut it out now, you're not going to have a sufficient aerobic base by the time states comes around. So let's hold that long run up there a little bit longer, right? And then we're going to slowly cut this out later on when we know it's going to stick for a little while, stick long enough for states. But now's not the time. So I know it's hard, but be patient. Let's look at the big picture here. And instead of focusing on the race that you have the last week of February, let's focus on states. And let's work backwards from there. So if we have a goal to hit this time or this place or perform a certain way at the end of the season, let's work backwards. So if I'm going to do that, I need to be able to accomplish X, Y, and Z and focus on those smaller goals instead of one individual race at a time, and especially not one individual workout at a time, right? Because it's a much bigger picture than that. So I just wanted to pop in here this evening and give my 2 cents on that. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Bye.